why think that reactors would be hit with missiles? Well, because it was threatened and fairly recent. The Azerbaijani Armenian conflict in 2020, the spokesman for the defense ministry said, well, uh, Armenia needed to be very careful because their Metsamor reactor could be hit, and they needed to behave. And they made it very clear that they were going to hit it with precision missiles, which were being supplied to it by, in this case, by Israel. And that's your Loral right there, or Laura, I should say, rocket. So they didn't do it, but they threatened to do it. Let's see what else has gone on recently. Oh, well, then you have the problem that I was studying with regard to Taiwan, and I would argue you need to look at South Korea and arguably Japan as well, and that is that um, South Korea has been threatened by the North publicly, and they have actually discussed what needs to be done to protect these plants in Parliament. I don't think they've done very much in South Korea, but this is an issue. The folks running the city of Taipei, the mayor, in a cavalier moment said, well, if they attack us, we should attack the mainland's reactors. He was told to be quiet and sit down because that probably might start World War III. And then China's bombers, among the targets that have been revealed in their training manuals include reactors on Taiwan. So this is not entirely an academic topic, even in East Asia. Let's go to the next slide. We even have proxies that have claimed that they were shooting at Dimona and at the UAE's reactor. And their rockets will just get better and better, and they will be able to do this if they want to effectively in the next few years, I think. Why does the precision make a difference? Remember, I said that if you have high inaccuracy, you have to use lots of bombs to bomb a big area. With precision, you not only know you're going to hit something, and therefore you don't need to use more than one weapon if you want to hit something in particular, but you can actually pick which part of the plant you want to hit. Now, that becomes important because you can do a graduated escalation, an escalation of threat against the target. For example, my favorite and the most likely thing you might do is you could land a missile harmlessly in the parking lot. What would that do? Well, scare everybody. They might shut the plant down, big amount of electricity come off the grid. The neighbors might jump in their car and clog up the roads. And if you were, anywhere in the neighborhood trying to invade the place, the other side might not be able to defend themselves because the streets would be all clogged with people trying to leave. Or you could gradually scare people, which we've seen in the case of Zaporizhia. You could hit the power lines going in. Well, why would you bother with that? Well, the power lines give the plant the electricity it needs to run the coolant pumps to keep the nuclear fuel spent and in the core from getting so hot that they might melt down, producing gases that would explode and cause radiological harm for a large area and a mass evacuation. Similarly, you could go after the diesel generating stations. Why? Well, they're the next line of defense if the power grid lines go down to supply electricity. Or you could go against the diesel generator fuel containers so that the amount of fuel would last not very long, maybe a day or less. You could hit the control room, which would knock the whole facility out. You could hit the steam generator pipes in between the steam generator and the core containment building. You could try to break into the main containment building. It has, about a 2 foot thick, maybe in some cases a little bit bigger, maybe 3 feet thick concrete protection, but you can penetrate that, and we'll show you how. Then finally, if there are spent fuel ponds that are outside of the reactor, where you put the spent fuel, these buildings on the outside, when they are on the outside, not always are they. For example, Zaporizhia has a good portion of its spent fuel not in ponds outside, but when it comes to ponds, the ponds are entirely within the containment building. But a lot of plants don't, and they have these things outside, and they're pretty soft. Now, those spent fuel ponds contain pretty hot, radiologically, harmful spent fuel rods, which, if you drain the water from that pool, will produce a spent fuel fire and emit lots of nasty radioactive products. So let's, with all this in mind, let's just take a look at one chart. I think it's the next one. So if you want to cause panic, evacuations, electrical supply disruptions, you might just target the parking lot, the grid connection, or maybe the emergency generators, and that can be done with light damage. If you want to go to high damage, you could do both the grid connection and emergency generators. Go after the control room or nuclear island. And extreme danger would be spent fuel ponds. If you wanted to cause widespread contamination and panic, you would skip the light damage and just go for high and extreme. So you've got a variety of games you could play that you can pick and choose from with a high reliability or assurance that you could pull it off. Again, that kind of game would be difficult to play at 20 or 30 years ago. Let's go to the next. Well, a lot of people don't understand that the tandem munitions, which have a shaped charge, which is generally associated with going after armor, where you'll notice that the pink material is not pointed in the same direction as the nose cone, but in the opposite direction. What's with that? Well, it's high explosive, and it's shaped with that cone so that when it goes off, it produces a plasma stream that's directly like a line or a drill forward. And it will bore through with the first charge at the nose, the pre-warhead shaped charge. That'll blast through the, in this case, 2 feet of concrete. And then the second charge will take on whatever's inside on the other side. That's one way you can go. Shaped charges date back to the Second World War. I think, like almost all good weapons, it was a Nazi design. I'm not sure about that, but generally, if you say a weapon was a Nazi design, you're not wrong. Another way to go is the next slide. This is a film of what's called a bunker buster. And we have them, and Chinese have them, and all God's children have a version of them. This is a particularly lethal one. All right, there's not much left there. So much for reinforced concrete. Not much left. Okay, point made. I guess this is another way of looking at it. And yet another way again. And you'll notice the rebar didn't help. All right, so let's go to the next slide. These are also popular. They're called the Blue Series, but again, other countries are getting these or have them. They can penetrate 60 or more feet, I believe, of reinforced concrete. Let's just say there's no reactor yet that could deal with any of this stuff. So, when people start talking about, well, it has robust containment, well, that may be. The containment, the concrete structure over the reactor that they're talking about, though, is a containment vessel. It is meant to contain gases on the inside from getting out, not to prevent missiles like this from getting in. That is for sure.